and I was trapped. I alone.
Tomas had spent 12 years monitoring thermal features in Yellowstone, and in all that time the ground had never once lied to him. Rangers watch the park's thermal activity the way a doctor watches a pulse. Small changes underground can mean something big is shifting. He knew every reading that region was supposed to give. In July 2019, a survey took him into the Beckler region, remote backcountry on the park's western edge. No boardwalks, no parking lots. The kind of place where you sign in and sign out, and if you miss either window, they come looking. His equipment registered something he had never seen in 12 years. Thermal activity. Significant thermal activity. In a zone that, according to every geological map he had ever worked from, is cold. Not warm. Not borderline. Cold. This wasn't a feeling. It was instrumentation. Numbers on a calibrated device he'd used 1,000 times. He walked a grid across the area, taking readings from different positions. Same result everywhere. Heat rising through ground that had no business producing it. He marked the coordinates, documented the readings, attached the photos, and filed a standard incident report through the normal chain. Routine. He'd filed hundreds. 3 days later, the report came back. Not rejected. Not returned for clarification. Returned with sections blacked out and a single note written in the margin. 5 words. Do not refile. Awaiting review. Tomas had been a ranger long enough to know that awaiting review is not a real designation. It's a placeholder. A box you put something in when you need it to go away without technically deleting it. He called a contact at the regional office and asked what happens to reports flagged that way. There was a long pause on the line. Then the contact said, "I've never seen one come back. Here's the part he keeps coming back to." He'd taken his own photos on his personal phone that day out of habit. When he went to look at them a week later, the images from inside that zone were gone. Not deleted into a trash folder. Gone. Every other photo from that trip was there, just not those. He never found out what the readings meant. He never found out who blacked out his report, or why awaiting review was still the status 2 years later when he finally stopped checking. What he does know is this. 3 weeks after he filed that report, 2 hikers went missing in the Beckler region. Their gear was found about half a mile from the coordinates he had documented. The official cause of their disappearance was never determined. He left Yellowstone the following season. He said the thing that drove him out wasn't the reading. It was that the reading was erased before anyone would even tell him what it was. Heat rising through cold ground. A report blacked out with "Do not refile." Personal photos gone from his own phone, and 2 hikers missing a half-mile away 3 weeks later. Here's the honest question. Was that report buried because someone knew exactly what caused those readings and didn't want it on record? Or is the more unsettling answer that nobody knew, and burying it was easier than admitting the map was wrong about what's under that ground? One of those means someone's in control. The other means no one is. Tell me which scares you more. Dana had worked law enforcement in the Great Smoky Mountains for 6 years, and she'd answered 100 noise complaints. They were the most boring call she got. Someone camping too close to the trail, music too loud after quiet hours. Nothing about them ever raised her pulse. In October 2021, she caught one near Klingman's Dome. Campers playing music, the report said. She drove up and hiked to the site around 9:40 at night. No campers, no fire, no tent. But there was sound. It was coming from the tree line, and it did not stop when she arrived. Which is the first thing that was wrong, because people go quiet the second a ranger's flashlight hits them. This didn't go quiet. It kept going, steady, like it hadn't noticed her or didn't care. She recorded it on her department field recorder. 37 seconds. She held the recorder up and watched the level meter move, and she remembers thinking the meter was reading the sound as louder than her own ears were, like part of it sat under what she could actually hear. She logged the time and location and filed it with an incident report titled Unattended Noise, Klingman's Dome Sector. Routine paperwork. She uploaded it to the incident system the next afternoon at 4:17. At 4:52, 35 minutes later, the whole report was gone. Not just the audio, the entire file. Incident number, narrative, attachment, all of it. She refreshed the system 3 times thinking it was a glitch. The incident number returned nothing, like it had never been entered. Then she got an email from someone she didn't recognize. No signature, no office. 2 sentences. This incident has been reclassified. Do not discuss outside chain. She forwarded it to her supervisor. He never replied. When she brought it up in person a week later, he told her he hadn't received any email and changed the subject. She only ever described what was on that recording to one person, a former colleague years later after she'd left the service. She said it wasn't an animal. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't weather. The closest thing she could compare it to was a voice, but structured wrong, like someone had taken human speech and removed all the pauses. Every gap between words gone, so it ran as one continuous sound that a throat couldn't produce. And she said the recording didn't start and stop the way sound does. It arrived, and then it left, like it had a direction, like it had walked past the recorder rather than been captured by it. She stopped hiking alone after that night. She never explained to anyone why. When her colleague asked what she thought it was, she said the honest answer was that she didn't want to know, and that whoever pulled the file in 35 minutes clearly already did. A sound like speech with the pauses cut out. A report erased 35 minutes after upload by someone with no name and no office. So here's what I can't settle. If a file gets pulled that fast, someone was watching that system in real time, waiting for exactly this. Does that tell you the thing in the tree line was already known and cataloged, something they were monitoring for? Or is it scarier that a recording of it existed for 35 minutes and someone made very sure it wouldn't exist for a 36th? Tell me how you read the speed of it. The third account isn't about what a ranger found. It's about what a ranger was told not to do. A distress beacon that went off in the rainforest and an order that has never been explained. That's next. Elias had been a patrol ranger in Olympic for 7 years, and the one call that overrides everything else, the one you never hesitate on, is a beacon. When a personal locator beacon activates, someone has decided they are going to die without help. You deploy. You don't wait. You don't assess. You go. At 11:18 at night, Park Dispatch picked up an activation from a locator beacon registered to a solo hiker on the Ho River Trail, about 6 miles from the trailhead. A woman. Alone. In the rainforest, in the dark. Elias got the alert at 11:22. At 11:27, he submitted the standard search and rescue deployment request, helicopter if the weather allowed, a ground team moving at the same time if it didn't. The response came back at 11:41. 6 words. No assets available for that sector. Hold. He read it twice. Then he pulled up the operations log for that night because no assets available has to mean something specific. A team already out, a weather ground stop, a staffing gap. There was nothing. No other operation was running. no weather restriction, no staffing shortage logged anywhere. The sector was clear. Every asset he needed was sitting available. He called dispatch directly and asked what the actual problem was. The voice that answered wasn't his usual contact. Different person. Calm. Unhurried in a way that didn't fit a beacon still transmitting somewhere in the dark. "Stand down, Ranger. This comes from above me." He hung up and filed a formal inquiry that night. A written request for an explanation as to why a confirmed live beacon activation was met with a stand-down order when every resource was available. 3 days later, he got a response. Not an answer, a notification. His inquiry had been reclassified under a review designation and closed. He filed it twice more over the next year. Same result each time. Reclassified. Closed. No explanation, ever. The beacon transmitted for 6 hours that night before it went silent. He knows because he checked the log before it too. Stopped being accessible. The hiker was never found. And here's the detail that keeps him up. There is no public record of her disappearance. Her case isn't in any missing persons database he could reach. When he searched her name, a real woman with a real beacon, registered to a real device, there was nothing. As if the night had been lifted out whole. He left the service not long after. He said he could live with not knowing what was out there in the hoe that night. What he couldn't live with was being the person on the other end of that signal, the one whose entire job was to answer it, and being ordered, with no reason he was ever given, to let it ring. A live distress beacon. Every rescue asset available. A stand-down order from a voice that wouldn't give a name, and a hiker who left no record behind at all. Here's the real question. A stand-down only makes sense if going in was more dangerous than leaving her, which means somebody decided that sector wasn't safe to enter, even for a rescue. So, what does a place have to contain for the people whose job is saving lives to be told to let one end? Tell me what you think was in that sector. I want to hear it. Subscribe to Obscure Nights. 3 Rangers. 3 reports that stopped existing the moment they were filed. Whatever you believe about why, these accounts carry 4 lessons that are worth taking into the backcountry with you. Lesson 1. Never rely on a single point of documentation. Every one of these rangers filed through one official channel, and that channel was the exact thing that got controlled. If you record or photograph something that matters, get it onto a second device and offline before you leave signal range. One copy is a copy someone else can manage. Lesson 2. A personal locator beacon is still the best tool you can carry, but understand its limits. It sends your position to a response system. It does not guarantee who answers or how fast. Pair it with a trip plan given to a real person. Exact route, exact return time, and instructions to call it in the moment you're overdue. Lesson 3. Tell a private individual, not just an agency. A family member or friend who will physically make noise if you don't come back is a form of accountability no system can quietly close. Give them your coordinates before you go dark, not after. Lesson 4. Trust the instinct that made all 3 of these rangers keep pushing. When something you witness doesn't match the record you're handed, that gap is information. Write down what you saw, date it, and keep your own copy somewhere no one else controls. Thank you for trusting Obscure Nights with these accounts. If you have an encounter of your own, our submission email is in the channel bio. We read every single one. This is Obscure Nights, where the cases nobody talks about get told the way they actually happened. Good night.